Again, I'm Miss Encartado, and I am your OLC here in Oral Communication in Context. Okay, so let us start our discussion for today. So our lesson is all about intercultural communication. And when we say intercultural, it means between different culture. And intercultural communication means you are communicating with a person or group of people who are culturally different from you. You don't have the same beliefs, you don't have the same tradition, you don't have the same symbolism or values since you are from different culture. And of course, when we are engaging in intercultural communication, you have to respect and be open about those differences. And nowadays, because of the technology and the transportation that we have, we can easily get to know other people from different countries. We can easily communicate to them, we can video call them, we can chat them, and we can also go to every country using the transportation that we have, like airplanes. And because of that, we will be able to know other people's culture and we can be easily exposed to their culture. Of course, at the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the aspects of intercultural communication. You will be able to identify problems in intercultural communication. And lastly, at the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify and apply strategies to avoid intercultural communication breakdown. So, what is culture? According to this, culture is the accumulated learned behavior of a group of people. It is the way of life of people that they accept without thinking, and it is passed along from one generation to another through imitation and communication. So, when we say culture, this is the way of life of groups of people and the way they do things. Of course, we have different culture. You belong to a particular culture, and me, I belong to different culture. So we do things differently. And according to this, there is a passing on of information from one generation to another. So I have here five aspects of intercultural communication. We have the cultural identity, we have the gender role, age identity, social status, and of course the religion. So in order for you to understand the aspects of intercultural communication, let us first have the cultural identity. So when we say cultural identity, it refers to a person's self of belonging to a particular culture or to a particular group. Like for example, you, to where culture do you belong or what is your culture? So you have your own culture, right? And I have my own culture too. So that is our cultural identity. According to this, different culture doesn't necessarily mean you live in a different country or continent. Different culture can be seen within a community. Say culture in rural areas versus urban areas. We can observe different culture from one family who lives next door to us. So example of this is our country, which is the Philippines. Even though we live in the same country, we still have different cultures, right? We have different religions, we have Muslims, we have Catholics, we have INC and more. And of course, we have also different beliefs. Another example is the culture of Chinese versus the culture of Filipinos. According to this, Chinese families teach children early on the value of handling money well, as they want their children to focus more on business, maths, and sciences. Also, it is part of their culture to be transparent when it comes to money matters. So that is the culture of every Chinese. On the other hand, Filipinos shy away from talking about money with their family as it is prohibited. Money is often a topic avoided as it brings misunderstanding. So, see the difference between the culture of Chinese and the culture of every Filipino. So, that is the cultural identity. It refers to a person's self of belonging to a particular culture or to a particular group. So after the cultural identity, let us have the gender role. Gender is a social construct and is not synonymous to sex. which refers to the anatomical differences between male and female. Gender roles are learned and taught by culture. A culture's language reflects the social roles of men and women. So, gender role, this is how we are expected to act, how we are expected to speak, to dress, or groom based on our gender. So, if you are a male, or if you are a female, for example, girls and women are expected to be polite and mahinhin or modest, while boys and men are expected to be strong and powerful, right? Another example is the mother should be at home taking care of the children and doing household chores, and the father should work and provide for the family. So that is the gender role. This is how we are expected to act, expected to speak, expected to dress or groom based on our gender. So now we will move to age identity. This refers not only to their biological age, but it is also about how they think and feel about themselves as they age. Age identity influences one's self image, language use, personality, attitude, and communication with others. We consider that some children can be mature, and not all adults are responsible and matured. We may have dealt with cases wherein old people usually generalize that teenagers as brash and impulsive, even if this is not true. Moreover, older people, especially those have reached their 50s, to be fragile and slow. So here in the age identity, people will judge an individual whether he is too young or too old for it. Have you ever heard the sentence, "You're too young to understand"? Have you ever heard that? For example, you want to express your feelings to to your parents, and then they just told you to just keep quiet because you're too young and they are older than you. So that is the age identity. People will judge an individual whether he is too young or too old for it. So from the word itself, age. Okay? Now we will move to social status. Social status is determined and assigned according to income, titles, possession, and etc. So social status, your status in our society. Social classes in other cultures also differ from one another. Generally speaking, the lower classes usually work blue-collar jobs, while the upper middle and the upper upper class hold white-collar jobs or manage their own business. So when we say white collar job or white collar workers are known as suit and tie workers who work in service industries and often avoid physical labor. So when we say white collar jobs, these are work that is done mostly inside the office, or these are the work of the rich people mostly. While the blue collar stereotype refers to any worker who engages in hard manual labor such as construction, mining, or maintenance. So again, here in the blue collar job, it requires manual labor. Example of social status is here in the Philippines, if you speak English, people will automatically think that you're from rich family, right? Only in the Philippines. And of course, it will affect how the people will communicate to you. So they will treat you well since they know that you are from rich family, and they will treat you well because of your social status. So again, social status is determined and assigned according to income, titles, possessions, and more. And lastly, of course, we have the religion. Religious identity is when someone sees themselves as a member of a religious group and may be active or inactive in practicing the rituals and customs. Religion plays a big part in the lifestyle of a person and seen as sacred and important. Thus, religious issues and prejudices should be handled respectfully. So here in the Philippines, we have Muslims, we have Catholics, we have INC, Jehovah, and more. And of course, as a person, we have to respect other people's beliefs, okay? So those are the examples of religion. So now that we're done with the aspects of intercultural communication, we will now move to the problems in intercultural communication. Number one, we have here the ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is the term applied to ethnic bias. This term comes from the word ethnos, meaning nation, and the word center. This is the conscious or unconscious worldview coming from a person's own perspective, which establishes an archetype or rating of other groups in reference to the ideal of his or her own group. This kind of worldview often results to the inadequate understanding of other cultures and judging other groups according to the preference of the group they belong, in which often leads to assertion of the inherent inferiority of other groups. Tunnel vision is the idiom used for ethnocentrism. So when we say ethnocentrism, this is the belief that one culture is better than the other culture. For example, you believe that your culture is much more better than me. So that is what we call ethnocentrism. Have you ever seen someone eating a fried frog or fried cricket and you think that it is gross and you told that person, why are you eating that? We don't eat that kind of food, so you shouldn't eat that kind of food too. So that is an example of ethnocentrism. You are using your own culture to evaluate other culture, or you are judging other people and expecting them to act and think the same way just like you. So again, when we say ethnocentrism, this is the belief that one culture is better than the other culture. After the ethnocentrism, we have the stereotyping. Stereotyping is the generalization made about a group of people underestimating their culture. So this is according to Baraceros and Lintao. Stereotyping assumes members of a group of people share the same characteristics. When one stereotypes, you judge how a person behaves or looks based on what you believe about the group where they belong. So, for example, you notice that your male classmate is physically clean and he also applies powder on his face sometimes. So, when you assume that he is gay, since he is physically clean and he puts powder on his face sometimes, that is what we call stereotyping. It is a mistaken idea or belief since you base on how he looks outside, even though your male classmate is not gay, you assume that when you assume that he is a gay, so that is what we call stereotyping. You judge how a person behaves or looks based on what you believe about the group where they belong. Another kind of stereotype can be seen in local television series. Usually, women protagonists have long straight hair, while antagonist women have short or curly wavy hair. Another thing to observe is how rich families are usually seen in formal clothes, even if they're inside their house, and will not be attending any formal event. These stereotypes are very far from real rich families who dress simply when going out or even dress in plain house clothes when they are inside their house. And of course, we have the prejudice. Prejudice is one has a negative preconceived notion, feeling or attitude against a cultural group. These assumptions are often made even if there is little or no interaction with this said group at all. So when we say prejudice, it is an opinion about someone based on that person's membership rather to a particular group. For example, an example can be the prejudice towards Muslims. According to this, in Manila, it can be observed that Catholics are usually wary. When we say wary, careful or cautious. So Catholics are usually careful of Muslims. The author has observed how their neighbors are always hesitant or reserved when interacting with their Muslim neighbor. Rarely did anyone talk to their Muslim neighbor during events or gatherings. This prejudice usually comes from how Muslims are portrayed by media. Thus, when one encounters a Muslim in society, their prejudice for this certain group kicks in. So again, when we say prejudice, it is an opinion about someone based on that person's membership to a particular group. Another example, someone holding prejudiced attitudes toward older adults may believe that older adults are slow and incompetent. For example, other adults wants to apply for a job, but someone holding prejudiced attitudes toward older adults may believe that they cannot work or they are slow and incompetent. So just like this. And now we will talk about how to avoid intercultural miscommunication. Number one, delay attributing meaning or don't give meaning to nonverbal signals. According to this, avoid interpreting nonverbal signals made by a person from another culture until you have read and studied their culture adequately. When visiting another place, say a province or country, study their culture before the trip and try to learn more about their nonverbal cues. Example of culture in Japan, just like what you can see on your screen. You need to hold your business card with both hands and to bow when you give it to someone. And also, the receiver of the card must receive the card with both hands too and with head bowed slightly. So that is the culture of every Japanese. Another is in Iglesia ni Cristo. Women and men cannot sit together in one side even though they are already they are already married. So and also women are expected to wear a skirt or a dress using during the service. So those are the culture of Iglesia ni Cristo and example of the culture of Japanese. So again, number one, to avoid miscommunication when you are interacting or engaging in intercultural communication, you have to delay attributing meaning or don't give meaning to nonverbal signals. Number two, develop awareness of your nonverbal communication. Be mindful of how you use your face, gestures, body language, and voice when communicating. Understanding how certain cultures react to certain body language can smoothen and make the experience with other cultures pleasurable. Be aware of your voice, of your fidgeting, or even the space you allot when communicating with people from other cultures. So we studied proxemics, right? The space, which is the language of space. So again, you have to develop awareness of your nonverbal communication. Example is a thumbs up sign in Filipino. In us, it means that we approve or we're okay or we agree with that. While in the Middle East or in the other country, the thumbs up sign is almost equivalent to giving someone the middle finger. So again, you have to develop awareness of your nonverbal communication. Maybe on us here in the Philippines, a thumbs up sign means yes or approve. But on the other country, we are not sure that that is the only meaning of a thumbs up sign. Okay? And lastly, of course, check whether nonverbal messages correspond to verbal messages. It is given that you will not be able to understand the language of another group or culture immediately, so you have to be very observant and persistent in listening when you communicate with them when you communicate with them. Sometimes misinterpretation can happen when the verbal and nonverbal messages come in conflict with each other. Paying attention and being very mindful of how a person speaks or reacts can give you clues if you really are communicating with each other. So for example, you ask your friend like, "Are you okay?" Then he responded, "Yes, I'm okay." But you think that he's not okay because of his nonverbal action. So of course, you have to check whether nonverbal messages corresponds to verbal messages. So that would be all for today. If you have questions or clarifications, you may now chat it on the chat box.